We don't know everything clearly about what happened early this morning in downtown Orlando, but obviously, you are a former police chief for the city of Orlando. You know how big of an event Halloween night is in downtown Orlando. What sort of planning goes into preparing for a night like that?
Well in advance of the night, the preparations begin. But you also have to keep in mind that this is not unusual for the downtown area to have large crowds of this magnitude whenever a special occasion comes around, whether it's Halloween, July 4th, New Year's Eve. Those are big events for downtown, and the city, the police department, is very used to working those.
So there has been some talk about the level of security in downtown Orlando and whether this should have been designated as a special event zone and if that could have allowed for even greater levels of security, such as metal detectors. Who is ultimately responsible for the final level of security for events in downtown Orlando?
So it's a combination, right? You have the city of Orlando, you have the business community, and then you have the legislation by which both are governed when it comes to the need to exercise some form of restriction to allow people into an area or not allow people into an area unless they go through a checkpoint. So I believe that there will be further discussion to figure out where the obstacles are that could prevent a true checkpoint style egress environment, so that whenever you have a large event like this, the expectation should be that you will go through some type of checkpoint. But that's just one of probably many options that the city and the business community will have to weigh in on.
Yeah, we heard from current Orlando Police Chief Eric Smith, who said that due to the recent change in law that allows permitless concealed carry weapons, it has changed some of their tactics. And he specifically mentioned that they used to have canines looking or sniffing for, I guess, weapons in the downtown area, and that was not the case last night. Can you employ those types of techniques and tactics under this new law, or what exactly would you be allowed to do?
So, out of this tragedy, hopefully there will be some discussion at the legislative level so that, to your earlier point, if you designate an area, an entertainment zone, that maybe state statute should govern the ability for an individual to enter those areas and basically not make it an allowable act if the person has a concealed weapon. Meaning, if you have a footprint that basically has been designated between certain hours as an entertainment zone, then I just can't imagine why someone would say no to legislation that would regulate whether you can carry your concealed weapon in those areas or not. You're not going into the club, you're just hanging out, then maybe there's justification there to prevent you from doing so.
That seems like a really big task for even the Orlando Police Department to create almost this safe, secure zone where people would have to go through a single checkpoint, especially when you think of a place like downtown Orlando, where there are so many roads, so many buildings. It seems like it could be fairly easy for someone to penetrate that zone without going through the metal detectors.
And that is going to be one of the challenges. I often felt that maybe it should be applied in sections, whether between Central and, say, Magnolia, maybe have different blocks where people would have to go through a checkpoint or entry process, again, where the bulk of the clubs are, but yet have some form of restriction in order to do that. I think that you can get very creative in your abilities to best address what the needs are, but there's going to take some the business community is going to have to give also in allowing for some of these measures to be implemented, because I did hear that there was a lot of cry from the business community if the patrons were being restricted, that was causing some issues for their revenue. And unfortunately, something has to be in place in order to at least help prevent something like this. Will it be the cure-all for everything moving forward? Absolutely not. But anything that can be done to minimize the potential for something like this occurring should be welcome.
Have you had a chance to review the surveillance video that we have seen from the City of Orlando cameras over those intersections?
I saw what has been released from obviously your outlet and other outlets that have aired it. The heroics that were displayed by the officer who was closest to the gunman, that is commendable. The officer, without hesitation, knew that he had to take action, and that was a split-second decision. And just imagine if the individual felt empowered to shoot and kill someone in the presence of the officers. Needless to say, I think he would have not hesitated to fire his gun again. And thankfully, because this officer's actions, he was not able to do so.
I do want to talk a little bit about the training that goes into something like this. Our trooper Steve Montiero was looking at that video and analyzing it. He called it a textbook example of what a police officer should do in a situation like that. Obviously, thousands of people running around in all directions. The officers, Orlando police, were able to take this person into custody without firing any of their weapons.
When you see the video and you see everyone running away from the danger, the sound of gunfire, and among the crowd, you see the officers running towards that danger. That should be a reminder that when officers take an oath to serve and protect, they're doing so and also taking into consideration the fact that they may be putting their lives on the line for the welfare, for the protection of others. In this case, the officers did what they were supposed to. They heard gunfire. They went towards the sound of the threat, obviously to try to identify it and stop it as quickly as possible. And it worked as it was intended. They were able to quickly secure the individual, which again, in my opinion, prevented from someone else getting hurt.
It seems to me, I know that Orlando Police works several large events, like you mentioned, whether it's 4th of July, whether it's New Year's, but Halloween almost, in my opinion, adds an additional layer when it comes to policing because you've got people wearing masks and in costumes and with all sorts of props. And to be able to spot and identify a threat, that seems to add to the challenge of doing that.
It does. And that's why, again, it's not the only answer, checkpoints, but at least having a system that allows for some type of metal detection to take place, I think it warrants further discussion.
We know that during your time when you were Orlando Police Chief, there were some special zones set up and there were additional screening methods underway from time to time. Did you ever uncover any weapons or foil any threats by having that in place?
No, I think what the department did then and continues to do now, they used a lot of their tactical squads to go out and proactively monitor garages and places where, again, more often than not, some of these guns were recovered during either a consensual or a probable cause to search a vehicle incident. Many of these guns were removed off the streets. Technology has also played a huge part. As technology continues to evolve and become more affordable, more cameras are being applied to areas such as this, which is a force multiplier, so that officers can monitor the activity and see. And there have been cases where individuals are literally showing what they have as far as their weapons in plain view of a camera, not knowing that the camera is recording them. So all of those things continue to be implemented. And I would say that it's an evolving process where when you think you have it all checked off, something like this happens and it allows you to go back to the table to revisit how it is that maybe you can provide better coverage. But in this case, 100 officers or so in that small footprint. I have mentioned this a couple of times already today. That's more than on any given day some counties in the state of Florida have on duty for the entire county. And that amount of officers were in the area. So the presence was great. The presence was there. Unfortunately, though, that individual could care less. And even with any other method to try to identify someone like him in the area, he didn't care. It appears he came to do something, committed a crime, and continue on to commit a second horrific crime not too far from the first one.
Um, During your tenure, Orlando's Real-Time Crime Center was envisioned. Explain exactly what that is and how the technology that you've been talking about plays into that.
It was a game changer for the Orlando Police Department. It allowed for cameras to be deployed out to places such as the downtown area. It became a force multiplier. Officers behind the camera screens were able to identify potential conflicts in the making, meaning like a fight was about to break out, that then allow for officers to be dispatched before the first 911 call was received. But it at the time there was also talk about engaging the business community to partner with them and bring in their cameras so that now that expense can be reduced and allow restricted access to some of the cameras at the establishments. Whether that has happened or not, I don't know. There was an idea that was embraced at the time, but don't know whether it came through or not. But crime centers are becoming more and more popular across the country. Orlando's is one of the state-of-the-art crime centers. So probably a lot of that footage that you saw and the ability for the Orlando Police Department to release that video as quickly as they did, in part, has to do with the crime center.
That was some crystal clear video of
Yep.
what transpired.
The resolution of the cameras is becoming better and better. We can see that with our phones. We can see that with just about anything that we have. So for the criminal element, something to note that the technology continues to improve. The technology continues to get better. So for those that are thinking about committing a crime in the downtown area, be mindful that just because an officer may not be within your sight doesn't mean that the officers are not watching you.
If there is one tool or resource out there that you're aware of that maybe OPD is not using right now that could help in a situation like that, what would it be? And what would you advise them to do?
Lisa, and I'm sure everyone is aware of this. Really, the best tool and the most effective tool that any community has is the community itself. Someone had to have known that this 17-year-old was headed into the downtown area armed with a gun. Someone didn't have the courage to call and report the fact that this individual was headed into the downtown area armed with a weapon. So that, I think, is the best tool that we need to capitalize on. We need to empower our communities to become more involved, more active, and not feel as if they do report something like this, that they're going to be left out there on their own. That, there are ways to report this type of stuff without you disclosing even who you are. So for future events, for future nights in the downtown area, the best tool that any community has that will benefit all is the citizens. The citizens need to report this type of activity when they become aware of it.